How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Strategy Room. You are live here on New Year's Day. This is pretty cool. 2025. We're getting the year kicked off at the right time, right way. Um, so it was kind of interesting. I was going to do a couple episodes here that I would normally do on like a Monday or Tuesday, and then I basically just decided, hey, why let's just start off the year right. I'll just kind of do a New Year's Day special, and so I'm going to do a couple things here today. Not going to be a super long episode here today. I wanted to recap a lot of the stuff that a lot of the material and things that I covered in a lot of episodes throughout the year. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on at the moment, and then some of the things that are going to be obviously big issues in banking throughout 2025. And then we'll kind of go from there. And so the first thing I wanted to say is that this has been a lot of growth, a lot of movement for me as we've kind of gone throughout 2024. So I, for people that don't know, I started this podcast in August of 2023, and basically was able to put out like 38 episodes there to that first kind of 3.5 months that I was doing it, and basically just feeling my way, kind of trying to figure out what worked, what did people like, what did people not like, that kind of thing, and that continued basically all throughout 2024. And I was very happy to say I went back and actually looked at my episode count, and I was actually thrilled to say I actually did 254 episodes in 2024, and that does not include the live streams. Basically, I did 24 live streams throughout the year, and I started the live streams in August of last year. And I basically did that to kick off the 1 year anniversary of the podcast. So, and I think as this evolved, I think it's evolved into a good format at this point. So now, basically, what I'm doing is putting out, basically an episode each day, Monday through Friday, and then doing the live stream on Saturdays, and basically Saturday nights. So, and that seems to be the formula now that is starting to work well, starting to play out well, and so we're going to continue with that for a while. And like I said, and I think people have been enjoying that. And then basically the episodes that premiere throughout the week are shorter episodes, basically like 10, just, kind of 10 to 15 minute videos that I put out on a particular topic that I really don't have the time to get, really in depth with during the normal live stream that I do. Live streams generally last for, about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half, just depending on how much material is there, how much needs to be covered. So that's basically the general format now. And I think now that I've been able to kind of figure out the format here of what's working and what people seem to like, now we're gonna begin the process of trying to make these things better. We're gonna try to begin the process of making the videos better, making the live streams better, and the main show on the channel being the live stream called Strategy Room. We're going to work on making it so the Strategy Room has more of its own identity. You're going to see, coming this year, you're going to see like a different banner, different effects, like different things like that, different logo, all that kind of stuff for the Strategy Room is basically I begin to brand that, if you will, more on the channel as the kind of main show of the channel. You'll see if anybody goes to the website, I'll run a little banner here for the website. So if anybody goes and checks out the bankernextdoor.com, basically the website is always a work in progress. We're continuing to work on that and build it up and make it a little bit better. A lot of changes will be forthcoming on that here within the next month. I've been working on a bunch of things behind the scenes to kind of update that and bring little different pieces here and there. So that's kind of what's going on. Now, I just want to take a minute as we go in and just kind of review some of the topics and things that I covered. I just want to run through quickly. So on the YouTube channel, and I always kind of refer people, anybody who's new or curious about the podcast, I always kind of refer them to the YouTube channel, because I think that's the easiest way to break down the content, because I do have the content broken down into a number of different playlists. And so some of the playlists that you'll find on there, I have banking related which is just kind of a catch-all. That's where the most of the videos fall into. So if I do a topic on like a personal financial statement or the 5 C's of credit or loan automation or something like that, a lot of that's going to fall into that just like banking related kind of catch-all topic space. But then I also have book reviews. We have interviews. I think I've done about 29 interviews so far over the last year on the channel. Hopefully a lot more coming this year. I do basically business movie and documentary reviews, and that's all business related. But I'm a big time movie buff, and I like watching a lot of documentaries as it relates to business related type things. For example, I just watched one on Netflix. It was basically called, I think it was like Largest Theft Ever or whatever. It was basically about a couple that stole Bitcoin that ended up being worth like $4 billion, which is pretty interesting. So I'll be doing a review on that. That's kind of a typical thing. I've got a whole list of stuff that I want to go back and do reviews on, I've got a list of about, probably about 30 movies and probably about 10 or 12 different documentaries that I want to eventually get to and eventually want to do reviews on, because I think most people are visual learners, and this being an educational podcast, I think that's the best way that people learn. Instead of, I could recommend books all day long, but the reality is, I think more people would sit there and watch a movie or a documentary. So if I can, what I try to do is if I could find the really good stuff and I can send it to everybody and say, hey, here's a great movie on this topic. If you want to understand this, go watch that. Go watch that. That'll give you a great insight as to what, kind of what happened or what's going on. Then we get into, I created a newer topic just about a month or so ago called Bank Technology and AI. Obviously, technology continues to become a major driving force, not only in banking, but in our everyday lives. And I had done a number of topics. I had covered a number of topics on a huge swath of different technologies and different things in banking. And I basically said, hey, at this point, like this really needs its own category. It needs to really be its own thing. And I have a whole bunch of episodes that I'm going to do over the next couple of months, all on different technology and technology related aspects, working with different vendors that do different things as far as core service providers like Fiserv, Jack Henry, other fintech providers like Q2, Verifin. Like there's just a whole litany. I mean, there's probably 150 different companies out there that provide all different types of services to banks. All over, banks, credit unions, savings and loans, mutuals, investment banks, what have you. But there's just a plethora of different companies out there that have all different kinds of products, and it's a ton to cover. And I think it's best to do that in little bites, little bites, a little bit here, a little bit there. But that is all, like I said, that's all now going into this bank technology and AI series. And I'll have a lot more on AI as the year goes along, because that just continues to be such a huge topic and people are fascinated by. I have been fascinated, I think, more so by some of the darker, I'll say it, the darker aspects of AI. I think the tech companies all want to present AI as this beautiful, glorious thing that is gonna make all of our lives better, and it's going to be fantastic and all this and everything. But there's a much darker side to this. When you read books like The Singularity, when you start to investigate terms like transhumanism, human 2.0, you start to learn about these different things. It really paints a very different picture of what's going on. And I think there are two camps right now. I think there is the camp that are just what I call technologists. They're just, people that love technology, people that love, inventing things, working on technology, trying to make things better. And then I think you have transhumanists. And transhumanists are a totally different breed, and they're all about the singularity. And again, if you don't understand these terms, I would highly recommend you, hey, do a Google, hit Siri and say, hey, Siri, what's the singularity? Hey, what's transhumanism? Hey, what's human 2.0? Because you really need to understand these terms if you want to understand fully, what's going on in the whole AI world, if you will, at the moment. So, like I said, we're going to talk a lot more about that this year. Some of the other series I have, the crypto series, which basically is kind of anything and everything in the crypto world, and that's an ongoing series. I think I have about 13 parts of that right now. I already have the next 3-4 parts, some rather entertaining stories that'll be coming up with that series here in the next couple of weeks. I'll have some more episodes there for that. So if you're, like I said, if you're interested in crypto, if you're interested in blockchain and Bitcoin and all those different things that go on in the crypto world, check that out. One thing I am going to rail against, and one thing that has kind of popped up here in just the last few weeks, is this notion of, you have people out there calling for, they want the crypto. Some of the people in the crypto world are calling for more access to the banking world. They want to get into the banking world, and I'm sure there are some banks out there that really want to get into this. There's banks like Customers Bank out there. However, I would remind everyone that we have gotten a glimpse of what it's like for crypto to get into the banking system. We saw that in early 2023 when we had the banking crisis, when you had Silicon Valley Bank go down, and you had Signature Bank go down, and you had Silvergate Bank go down. Nobody talks about Silvergate Bank. People should want to know. Silvergate Bank was the key to the whole thing. Silvergate Bank was the first domino. They were the domino that went down. Silvergate Bank was the main bank. That was how crypto was getting into the banking system, was through Silvergate and what they ran, what they called the SEN, the Silvergate Exchange Network. And that was how crypto was getting directly into a bank. And then the two backup banks were Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank, also in California with Silvergate, and then Signature Bank, which was in New York. And those were your three primary crypto banks, and they all went down within a 10-day period of time. It was like one after the next. It was like boom, 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 just a whole domino effect. And I really should work on a book about this whole thing, because I think people would find it very fascinating. But now, to be fair, these banks, primarily the regional banks, they were dealing with a myriad of other issues. You had unrealized losses on their bond portfolio. You had this massive amount of uninsured deposits. You had some delinquency in their loan portfolios. You had a number of different things going on, but it was crypto. It was crypto that was the match that lit that fire. Crypto was the match that lit that fire that went, set them all ablaze. And then you had, First Republic Bank. You had Credit Suisse. These banks all went down. Those other banks were basically just collateral damage in the whole thing. And you had a number of other banks that almost went down with them, but were able to kind of pull it out because the Fed was able to step in and kind of calm things down at the last minute there, to kind of save what would have eventually become a much larger bank run. So that's kind of the crypto series there. And that is something that I'm going to be keeping, this idea of getting crypto deeper into the banking system, banking ecosystem, as it were. That's something I'm really going to be pushed back on. Say, hey, look, I love crypto. You want to do crypto? You want to invest in crypto? That's great. That's wonderful. Please, by all means, go do that. But I do not want crypto to be intermeshed into our overall banking system, and that also applies to central bank digital currency. Do I want a central bank digital currency? No, absolutely not. Not under any way, stretch of the imagination. So that's kind of that. And then some of the other things I had was the Lords of Easy Money series. Now that series is over, because it was a book review of a book called The Lords of Easy Money. But it was one, I said it many, many times, it was one of the best books that I had read in the last 10 years. It covers basically the Federal Reserve from the financial crisis in '08, basically all the way up to 2021. And I've got another book called $1 Trillion Triage, which basically kind of covers 21, 22. I'm going to be doing a review on that sometime in the next month or two, because it's kind of like almost like the follow up to the Lords of Easy Money in a certain respect. So I'll be getting into that. But if you really, I keep saying, if you really want to understand what the Fed has been doing, how catastrophic of a job the Fed has done over the last 15 years, you have to read The Lords of Easy Money. Read that, go back. And I designed that series in a fashion where, you could look at that in a couple of different ways. Like you could either go through and watch each episode, and some of the episodes are longer than others. Like some of them are like 30 minutes, some of them are 45 minutes. I think a couple of them are like an hour. It just depends on how long the chapter was, how long it kind of took to get through everything that was in it, because those chapters are just jam packed with a ton of stuff. Each chapter is just like it's like the Christopher Leonard, who wrote that book, he just dropping one bomb after the next every chapter of that book. It was amazing. But I also designed the series so that the book had 3 sections, and I designed it so that I did reviews of each section. So for example, if you wanted to just do like a 2-hour thing on the book, you could just watch the 3 episodes that did the reviews of each section of the book. And then maybe if you wanted to watch the last episode, which was kind of like a recap of the whole thing, you could turn that on and you could watch that and get the whole thing if you wanted to do it a lot quicker. So like I said, I designed a couple of the episodes in that series to give people variety. Like I said, if you want to go through and listen to each chapter, I broke all that down and did that. But if you want the quicker review, you can just go to the section reviews. And then, like I said, maybe watch the last episode, which was just a recap, just to get the kind of nuts and bolts, the quick overview, if you will, of the book itself. But that was the Lords of Easy Money series. Now, in 2025, I have a new series which is going to be debuting here. I think I'm going to debut this on Martin Luther King Day on the 20th, because basically most people will be off that day. Most people will be home, and I think that would be a great day for this. Now, this is going to be called the BND Financial History Series, and this is basically going to be 12 episodes. I'm hoping to do 1 episode each month. I'm thinking about live streaming these episodes on YouTube, doing them as a live stream, and I'll probably do this. Like I said, the first one will premiere on Martin Luther King Day. I might do the second one on President's Day, but then after that, I mean, I'm not going to have a holiday every month that I could do something on. So I think after that, I'll probably just pick a certain night during the week and then just do that episode. That night. But I'll let everybody know that. But just to give you guys kind of a taste of what we're doing here. So the idea behind this series is to do basically 12 episodes and to do it as like a season, more like a season. So this will be like season 1. And we're going to cover, each season will basically cover a century and look at what are the main like financial topics, the main financial things that happen in that particular century. So we're going to be doing the 20th century. That'll be the first one we'll cover basically here in season 1, if you will. And we're going to start out and we're going to do the Panic of 1907. And we're going to, and basically every episode is going to be tied to a book. I got a book that will be used to cover each topic. Now, it's not going to be a book review per se, but we're going to use that book as kind of like a guide as we go through and talk about the events of what happened, the people that played a role, and we're gonna use the books. So like I said, we'll refer to certain sections or topics or chapters in the books to kind of guide us through the topic. And if people have more interest, they could go back and read the book on that particular topic. So like I said, we're going to be looking at the Panic in 1907, lessons learned from the market's perfect storm, based on a book by the same name of Robert Bruner and Sean Carr. Then we're going to go on to Charles Ponzi. We're going to basically talk about the life of Charles Ponzi based on his book. He obviously created the Ponzi scheme. We're going to look at that. Then we're going to get into the creation of the Federal Reserve. We're going to be talking using the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Then we're going to get into the crash of 1929. And we're going to look at the book written by the great economist John Kenneth Galbraith and his book, The Great Crash of 1929. And as part of that, we're going to have a discussion kind of like on England and Germany after World War I and how their problems throughout the 1920s helped lead to the Great Depression here in the U.S. Then we're going to go to what's called The Rise of BIZ, the Bank of International Settlements. So we're going to look at a book called The Tower of Basel by Adam Labor, which is a fantastic read. Those people at the Biz were naughty little boys and girls there during World War II. They did a lot of reprehensible things that most people don't know about today. So I think people will find that one especially fascinating. Then we're going to get into Bretton Woods, the Bretton Woods Accord, based on the book The Battle of Bretton Woods, which basically set up the financial system after World War II. The Bretton Woods Accord. So you had three major events in the 20th century that particularly affected everything, financial world, our country. And that was the creation of the Federal Reserve, the Bretton Woods Project, and then when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. So we do, like I said, we do Bretton Woods, and then we get to August 15th, 1971. Richard Nixon abandons the gold standard, and this is going to be based on the book called 3 Days at Camp David. And we're going to look at how was the national debt affected by taking us off the gold standard? I think people are gonna love that, because you're gonna see exactly how we got to where we are today, being $36 trillion in debt, and why that directly ties back to that date of August 15th, 1971. Then we get into Bailout Nation, and we talk about the failure of Penn Square and the bailout of Continental Illinois National Bank in 1984, the birth of Too Big to Fail, based on the book Bailout: An Insider's Account of Bank Failures and Rescues. Then we get into Black Monday, the market crash in 1987, based on the book Black Monday, the catastrophe of October 19th, 1987. And then we're going to cap it off with the recession of 1990 and 1991, which is going to be based on the book Under Pressure, Politics, and the Federal Reserve during the 1990-1991 recession. And in that, we will also be talking about the Tax Reform Act of 1986 and how that had planted the seeds, which ultimately led to that recession from about 89, 90, 91. We'll talk about the RTC, basically the savings and loan crisis, the RTC and everything. So like I said, I am very excited about that series. Actually working on, I'm hoping to have a co-host when I do those episodes. It'll be on there kind of talking about these historical events and issues with me. So like I said, so hopefully stay tuned for that. That will be something that will be rolling out here very soon. And like I said, very excited about that the Financial Historic series, which will be, like I said, coming out here very soon. So, okay, let me hit on. I just want to run through. I'm not going to run through. Obviously, I did like I said earlier, I did 254 episodes here last year. I'm not going to run through all this stuff, but I wanted to just run through probably about 20 or 30 episodes, because I just want to give, if you're a new listener or you're not really familiar with the podcast, I just want to give people kind of a flavor for the type of topics that I cover when I do like regular episodes per se. So here's my list. So we did commercial real estate update. We talk a lot about the Fed. What is the Fed going to cut rates? They're going to increase rates. Like, what are they going to do? Bank M&A. A lot of bank M&A updates. We talk about credit card. I've talked about change and control agreements. We've talked about managing your regulator, U.S. population growth. Do bank regulatory updates all the time, generally on a quarterly basis. But if things are happening, or big, open banking, beneficial ownership information, a lot of the big topics that I've always talked about. We always get into a lot of that stuff here, but those are just typical things that we cover. Treasury funding. The SCOTUS decision on the Chevron doctrine, disaster. We talked about the jobs reports a lot. I cover a lot of reports here on the channel, like things like the Fed Senior Loan Officer Opinion Survey, different, FDIC quarterly banking profile, things of that nature. trying to think what else here. So I talked about like Republic Bank failure. That was one of the bigger banks that failed in 2024. Did a lot of coverage on that. Financial tips for Gen Z. New York Community Bank, which is now, what is it, Flagstar Bank, I think is now, they changed their name to, covered that kind of roller coaster, always what was materializing with that. Japan ends the era of negative interest rates, what was called the carry trade over in Japan. We talked about that. A lot of the issues going on with China, covered some international things from time to time. Update on de novo banks, like what's going on with there. Get into... let's see here. Something was kind of interesting. I've covered different things about like the clothes topic, like, do the clothes make the man? How are people dressing in the workforce right now? And how does that play into company culture, how people feel about themselves, all this kind of stuff. I also did an episode on what was called the corporate athlete, which was basically just, how you should take care of yourself. And if you're planning on having a career, whether it would be in banking, financial services, or whatever it may be, if you're going to be there for 40, 45 years and have a good career, you got to maintain your health during that time. People go through, if you work in this business, it's could be highly stressful, and highly time consuming, highly stressful. And, people, like I said, you got to take care of yourself. You got to do the best you can to try to take care of yourself. And, so like I said, kind of covered that, those topics, which I think are interesting, which I like to do from time to time. Let's see here. Should banks be concerned about high efficiency ratios? How does higher for longer affect bank strategies? Some of the different topics and things that we covered. Public versus private bank executive compensation. Should banks be worried about loan loss provisions? So a lot of different topics and things that I love to get into. Again, this is kind of like all things banking. So we try to cover a lot of things, but a lot of the stuff that gets covered, I mean, it does, especially when I'm covering economics, if I'm covering, different economic indicators, whether it be the jobs reports, GDP numbers, all the different, housing numbers, construction numbers, all these different things that go on that we have to look at month in and month out. That stuff bleeds into general economy stuff. I mean, people that really don't even have an interest in banking can watch that and at least get a flavor for kind of what's going on in the overall economy and how that plays into, you just, managing your money, managing your budget, like all that good fun kind of stuff. What else do? We got into the 5 C's of credit. What is happening with office upfit costs? What does a good board of directors look like? What is happening with banks in Europe? FDIC state profiles. Saudi Arabia ends the petrodollar pact after 50 years. What challenges does CRE growth bring to your loan portfolio? Update on bank bond portfolios. We did a mid-year review. Review of 2024 compensation and talent survey. Again, just like some of the stuff that I would cover. Why are banks dumping their insurance units? What is happening with pharmacies? Let's see here. Banks are struggling to find compliance officers. Have all the buyers in banks banking disappeared? How is higher for longer affecting bank margins? So just a lot of different topics and different things that I've covered. I also I've done a couple episodes. I'm going to be doing one on Richard Parsons here, probably next week. I like, people that have passed away that have had a major impact on banking or financial services or the economy in general. Like I just did Bernie Marcus, who was one of the co-founders at Home Depot. I just think it's good to point out, people that have had a major effect on, the economic world or the finance world that have really, changed our everyday lives. I love to kind of point these people out. I did. Jim Simmons was a gentleman who had, Dr. Jim Simmons passed away who was the other gentleman that I'm thinking of? He did Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman. So Dr. Daniel Kahneman, they both passed away this year. They had profound effects. Dr. Daniel Kahneman did behavioral economics, basically looking at the psychology of money and how people, deal with different things. Everything from stock trading to simply managing your money month in and month out, the use of credit cards and things like that. So his work, his research just had a profound effect on a lot of things. And then Jim Simmons, obviously, he brought what became known as the rise of the quants on Wall Street. So he was one of the first guys to open up a hedge fund and have the focus be on quantitative trading and basically using algorithms, doing it all through quantitative mathematics. And he changed the whole game. Jim Simmons changed the entire game as far as how hedge funds, private equity, alternative investments, like how they did. That gave rise to then high frequency trading firms. He was just a game changer and brilliant gentleman. So, like I said, these are the kind of people I like to talk about, people that really changed the game, people that had a profound impact on things. So definitely love talking about them and chatting about people like that from time to time. Richard Parsons, very interesting character on Wall Street. Just like I said, just passed away this last week. Richard, I think it depends on who you talk to or who you looked at. Very controversial in certain respects. And like I said, I get into all this when I do the episode on him, but he, served on a lot of big boards, had some dealings with some banks that he basically bought and sold over the years. But he had to do with, there's a book called The King of Wall Street, which, gosh, I can't think off the top of my head, the gentleman that was involved in that, but basically it was like the head of the NASDAQ. And he got this, this was going back to 04, 05, that time period. And he got what at the time was, I think, the largest payout in the history of Wall Street. It was like $150 million. And people were just like, even people on Wall Street, even these hedge fund managers who were making, $50, $100 million a year, even they were kind of aghast at the greed that went on there. And the guy who basically okayed that salary, that payout, was Richard Parsons. And so there was some controversy there, some definitely some things that went on there that'll be kind of, I think people will find some interest in some of those things that we talk about. So, but again, I hope I'm giving people a flavor for, again, if you've never watched the podcast before, just a little bit of the how kind of large the scope is of the different topics that I cover here through, kind of week in, week out, month in, month out throughout the podcast. And so like I said, it was last year was a 2024 was a great year for the podcast. Really kind of took it up to a different notch. Really kind of found the rhythm, I think, for the podcast as far as like the format, how we're going to, do things moving forward. And I think, this has really been a great adventure for me up to this point. People seem to really be enjoying and liking the content and the stuff that I'm putting out. So I love it. And I always encourage people, like, if you've got comments, please put your comments in. Let me see. Let me know if you're liking something, you're not liking something. So that would be again, I always appreciate everybody's feedback. I always appreciate the feedback. Always appreciate the comments. So, okay. Now with all that being said, what are some of the things coming up this year that I think are going to be major topics here for 2025? So let's bring this in for a second. Now, this was from the ICBA. They put this out every quarter. This is kind of what they call their advocacy in action. And they basically hit all of the regulatory hot button topics and stuff like that. And so I'm sure the first quarter one for 2025 will be coming out here in the not too distant future. But what are some of the things that are covered here in this? And I just want to, where is this? Let me bring this up here. Okay, so the Farm Bill, obviously that just got passed. We saw that just got passed in there in the big bill that just went through Congress there at the end of the year. But obviously trigger leads is a big one that's still sitting out there. Obviously, central bank digital currency is a big one that's out there. Um, and then we get into, obviously, stable coins, decentralized finance. What kind of regulation or whatever is gonna eventually come out about that, where that will be a big topic throughout the year that people will be looking at. uh, I think two of the biggest ones are going to be this Section 1033 exemption. This is the open banking rule that I have talked about. Open banking, the whole concept here, and the CFPB just rammed this thing through here in the last 2 weeks. They rammed it in and basically said, yeah, this is coming. It's going to roll out in 2026. And this is where the Chevron doctrine. This is where the SCOTUS decision on Chevron was so enormous, because this open banking, this is not a law. This is not something that Congress came up with. This was just a rule. It was a rule that the CFPB decided in their infinite wisdom that they were just going to put out because they saw that so many people were just clamoring for this. So many people wanted it and had to have it. And they put it out there. And I am adamantly, vehemently opposed to open banking. I do not want it. If people understood what this it was, they would not want it. And again, I've done episodes on this, and I will talk about this. Like I said, I'm not going to get off on some huge rant or get real in depth on this right now. I just want people to understand that open banking is a bad thing, and it will bankrupt a number of banks around it. Mark my words, it will bankrupt a lot of smaller banks around the country, because there is zero profit motive for any bank to do this, and it's going to cost them a fortune to do it. Consumers, you should be highly skeptical of this, because this is going to basically put all your data in the hands of a lot of fintech companies and a lot of big players. If you don't think that Amazon and Google and Meta and all these different companies are going to be lining up to plug that API into the back of your bank and siphon out all of your information, and I would love for the Well, is there? Oh, sorry about that, everybody. I had major technical problems there, major power outage there for a minute. So sorry about all that. So I'm trying to get everything back up here. I had to, unfortunately, I have to reload everything here, um, but I'm gonna, like I said, like I said, I only want to spend a couple more minutes here and kind of wrap this thing up anyway. But so I was talking about open banking, and I just wanted to say that I don't understand how people get more control over their data by, handing that data over to some other company. Like, how does that give you more control over your data? I don't understand it. Somebody's going to have to explain that to me and try to make a valid argument for why that would be the case. Now, obviously, a lot of on the beneficial ownership information front. A lot of craziness happened there within the last week. First, we had the Fifth Circuit. There was an injunction filed in the 11th Circuit, and then the Fifth Circuit came back and basically said they voided that junction on Christmas Eve, and then on the 26th they came back and basically said no, it's that junction is back in effect and will remain in effect until the court case plays itself out. So all of the BOI reporting stuff is at least on hold for the moment. So we're going to have to sit back and see, what's going on there. But I think you have to look at this as a bigger picture. When you take a step back and you look at what is the government doing? Forget the bank regulators for a minute. What is the government doing in terms of overall regulation? Well, they implemented what was called 1071 out of the Dodd-Frank Act, and that was to get a lot more data points, a lot more information on small business owners in particular. Then you have the beneficial ownership information. What's that focused on? Again, small business owners. And then you have the open banking. And you even have the Fed Now. So what people need to understand about Fed Now, and I'll be investigating this more as 2025 goes on, and that is that Fed Now, the technology is based on blockchain technology. That's the rails. The rails of Fed Now, if you will, are set up on blockchain technology. So all you have to do is put that train on top of the rails and run it right down the track, and that train could be central bank digital currency, for example. So I take a step back and I look at all these things as a whole, and I say, that our government has got this insatiable appetite for our data, and they have this insatiable appetite for wanting to know everything that you do every 5 minutes of the day. And I know that some people out there won't like these comments, but I say them anyway. The government doesn't have a right to know what you do every day. It's in the Constitution. It's in the Bill of Rights. You have a right to privacy. Your government does not need to know or have a right to know what you're doing every 5 minutes of the day. And I talk about, like, this is why we have laws. This is why we have a judicial system. If the government thinks you're doing wrong, wait for it, they investigate you. Okay. But the government has no right to your data, your information, to know what you're doing, how you're spending your money. The government doesn't have any right to that. Now, I know some people won't like that, but hey, we're supposed to live in a free society, right? Like, that's what it's all about. So, and I think, based on the surveys that came out throughout the year, especially particularly at the end of the year here, different information that came out in different articles and things that I was reviewing, the bankers, when you talk about bank CEOs, bank CFOs, the major executives at banks, their number one concern was regulation. That was their number one concern. They saw this amazing governmental overreach on behalf of the Biden administration, and particularly on behalf of the bank regulators, whether it was the OCC, the FDIC, the CFPB, the Federal Reserve, whoever it was, collectively as a whole, they just this massive overreach and just jump into, okay, we are just gonna, just hit you over the head with just a ridiculous amount of regulation, driving up the massive cost. And then, and what's amazing is that like people will then sit there and say like, well, yeah, well, why won't the bank lend me money, or why won't the bank do this, or why won't the bank do that? A lot of it has to do with the regulations that banks have to comply with. The more regulation the bank has to comply with, the less willing they're going to be to do a lot of things, because they're just going to sit back and say, well, why are we going to do that? Because the downside is that if we get slapped by the regulators, we're going to get slapped hard, and we're going to have to pay a lot of fines, and it's going to be really nasty, and we don't want to do that. So the path of least resistance, if you will, is just not do that. We're not going to lend money to this industry. We're not going to, again, the regulations have a very chilling effect. And like, this is like when you get into all of the environmental stuff, like the ESG, that all that stuff has a very chilling effect on banks. Now, all of a sudden, Exxon or Chevron or somebody comes in and basically says, hey, we'd like you guys, so we're going to drill some oil wells. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it's like, no, banks are like, nah, I don't even want to deal with it. Don't even want to deal with it because it's going to be too much of a regulatory headache for me. So it's better just to not, so now, you've got a lot of companies out there that in certain industries that like they can't get loans. They can't get lending from banks, so this is what happens when you have too much regulation, when you have an over the top, overzealous amount of regulation. Now we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the new administration coming in here in just a couple of weeks, and we'll see what their take is on that. But regulation is going to continue to be one of the big things that is going to play out throughout all of 2025. I have a feeling with like open banking that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits around that. There's going to be a lot of pushback to not allow that to be implemented starting in 2026. I think, again, we're going to see this huge court battle over the beneficial ownership information, and that on its face is completely unconstitutional. And I was very happy to see that the lawsuit that was brought by the National Small Business Association proved that the BOI was completely unconstitutional, violated about 7 or 8 different amendments in the Constitution, and that's what the judge ruled on. That's why it ultimately ended up getting this big injunction. And so I think when it has its day in court, that whole thing's going to get shot down. And Congress, somebody in Congress already put forth a bill to amend because this all stemmed from a bill in 2022 called the Corporate Transparency Act, the CTA. And somebody's already put forth, I think, a proposal to basically completely redo that legislation, change it up, and get rid of all this BOI and all this other garbage that was in there. So, but we'll see. That all that stuff unfortunately takes time. It takes time to work its way through the courts, work its way through Congress. But again, like I said, this is all going to play out. One of the big things is mergers and acquisitions. Are mergers and acquisitions going to get back on track? Are the regulators going to now, what part of the issue there, which was the time frame, how long it took to get an M&A transaction done. If you're a bank, you want to buy another bank, you sign a deal, and then it's taken over 2 years to get that deal done, to get it okayed by the regulators so that you can move forward and close it and get it all done. That's just been sitting out there, and that's been a major problem in banking. So the length of time, the scrutiny on some of these transactions, which I think a lot of people would say has been kind of again kind of over the top. So hopefully we just get back to, again, it's just getting back to a normal environment. It's getting back to a normal operating environment where, it should take, 12 months, 18 months to get a bank merger deal closed. That should be it. So hopefully if we could just get back to a normal operating environment, you'll see bank M&A begin to pick up. Again, de novo banking, startup banks have been, next to nothing for the better part of the last 15 years. They started to pick up again a little bit when Trump had his first go around. We'll see what happens this time around. Hopefully, again, the regulation gets eased up to a point where some people will go out and start doing some de novo startup banks, because the industry needs it. The banking industry needs de novos. We need new startup banks. We have to have it. You have to have because the new startup banks they're the ones that bring the new ideas. They're the ones that bring the innovation. They're the ones that bring a lot of stuff, to the banking system itself. And we need that. The industry needs that. That it needs to be encouraged. We need, more startups, because sooner or later, what's going to happen is, if you don't have any new startups and we just continue to have all these consolidations, like, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be in a country with 2,000 or less banks. And they're all going to be big banks. They're all going to be much bigger, larger. The idea of your small local community bank, it could, like I said, it's in danger of becoming a thing of the past if this trend continues for, say, another 10 years that we're currently on. And what's interesting about that is that the regulators and a lot of these people, like, you have this whole ecosystem around M&A activity. You got investment bankers, you have accounting firms, you have law firms, you have all these people that consult. They provide valuations, they provide advice on negotiating the contracts, implementing the contracts, and then seeing it through, and then carrying out the actual merger itself, and then the investment bankers who put the deals together, and then also do capital raises to help banks to go out and do the M&A to begin with. You have all these people working on all these deals. Well, we get down to a point where we get to a point where you have 2,000 or less banks in the country. A lot of these people are going to work themselves out of a job, basically, like, because there just won't be. There'll be very little M&A activity at that point. You'll go from a point of having 100, 200, 250 transactions a year to a point where there'll be 3 transactions a year, 4 transactions a year, and they'll all be relatively big transactions, but they'll be few and far between. And so yeah, and then you get back to the regulators too. Look at the FDIC, who has a $3 billion budget, has, like, I don't know, 6,000 people working for them. Like, if we go down to a point where we only have 2,000 banks, do we really need to be giving $3 billion to the FDIC? Do they really need 6,000 people there anymore? I don't think so. So again, it'll be interesting to see. So I think the industry needs de novos, and hopefully that'll be something that we see there. Now, the industry is still dealing with a lot of issues itself. The idea this unrealized losses in the bank bond portfolios is still a major issue in the industry itself. Liquidity is still a major issue in the industry itself. Kind of this attack on the Federal Home Loan Bank, which the majority of banks in the country use to get a line of credit. The line of credits they get come from the Federal Home Loan Banks in their particular area. Are we going to see the kind of a backing off of that, where the Federal Home Loan Bank just gets left alone? We'll see. These are, like I said, these are all big topics that are going to be coming up that we're going to be looking at throughout the year. I think one of the big things right on the horizon is, what's the deal with Janet Yellen at the Federal Home Loan Bank? I had a couple things teed up here. Oh, I think I still have them. Let's see here. Hold on. Okay. So I want to show you guys something here real quick. If I can, yeah, here we go. Okay. All right. So I just want to show everybody this. I got 2 articles here. Like, this is, like, really interesting. So the first thing here is, Treasury Department says their systems were hacked by China or a China-backed actor. So several workstations and certain unclassified documents were accessed, the agency said. So obviously, big issue there. Got a little bit of news. I think it should have gotten a lot more coverage than it has so far. And then obviously this, Grandma Yellen dropped this giant bomb on us here. Right as she's walking out the door, she says, by the way, extraordinary measures are going to be needed to avoid a major default that will start in mid-January. So Congress needs to act by this summer to raise the nation's national debt ceiling. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the U.S. will hit its borrowing limit in the middle of next month triggering the use of extraordinary measures to keep the federal government from defaulting on its obligations. Now, Janet made some comments a week earlier that I thought were completely outrageous. She was kind enough to inform us that, the national debt is a major catastrophic issue on the horizon here. And that, she wished that she could have done a little bit more to address the issue. It wasn't a priority for her. She completely manipulated and basically emptied the cash at the Treasury over the last 12 months to basically manipulate the Treasury yield curve and everything else to try to get, her boy back in office. That didn't work out. So now she's kind enough to let us know that oh, I've left you this giant, what sandwich on the way out the door here. So we really should thank Grandma Yellen. Thankfully, she's going to be put out to pasture here very shortly, and we're not going to have to deal with her anymore because they're going to finally stick her back on the farm, and she'll be knitting quilts on her porch, and not destroying our economy anymore. The Treasury currently expects to reach the new debt limit between January 14th and January 23rd, at which time it will be necessary for the Treasury to start taking extraordinary measures. I respectfully urge Congress to act to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. Isn't this wonderful that she has, of course, she doesn't say, oh, this is my fault. I did this to you. My bad. No. She just says, oh, hey, by the way, I'm leaving this giant ticking bomb here for you, and you guys need to deal with that. So, but this is what we're going to deal with, and I've talked extensively about this in episodes already. That we're going to have this major catastrophe coming up here, and I do not envy Mr. Bessent, who's coming in here as the next Treasury Secretary. I don't envy him. He has got a colossal mess that he's going to have to go into day one. And my recommendation for him, his first day there, and I would, if I was him, I would do this massive, I would be doing a whole lot of prep right now. And the first thing I would do day one is like a 2-hour press conference. And I would lay out everything that Janet Yellen has done over the last 2 years to basically do her best to manipulate and ruin our economy. And I would show how she has, she artificially kept the yield curve inverted for the better part of the last 12 months. And, now has only let it revert back to normal status now, and basically has manipulated things to put off a recession that we should have had last year, but now it's probably going to hit us this year. Just because of all this craziness that's going to go on. And then you're going to have all this infighting amongst Congress with, trying to, cut the deficit, trying to get the national debt under control, trying to deal with the debt ceiling and all this other nonsense. I mean, this is going to get ugly very quickly here in the first couple months of this new year. And I wouldn't look for the Federal Reserve for any help. I think Jeremy, the Fed put has already been put on hold, and I wouldn't be surprised one bit if the Fed didn't cut rates at all this year. Mr. Powell is not going to be. I unfortunately hate to say this. I don't think Mr. Powell is going to be any friend to the Trump administration, or is going to try to work with them in any way to try to make things better. I think Mr. Powell is going to play. I think he's going to play Uber, CYA, and all of a sudden, I think when Mr. Powell comes out in January, I think all his conversation is going to be about, oh, the national debt's out of control, and we got to fix this. And interest rates are going. The 10-year Treasury, all the Treasury rates are going up, and inflation. We got to really worry about inflation. All of a sudden, all these things that were fine a month ago are all of a sudden going to become a huge problem. It's going to be the reason why he's completely paralyzed and can't do anything. And we just have to let these things play out. And, and he'll probably, like I said, he'll probably throw it back on Congress and say, oh, Congress has got to deal with this, or Congress has got to do something. So, but like I said, these are the things we're going to be dealing with in the short term, as like I said, as well as all of the big themes rolling out in banking throughout 2025 here. So With that, I'm just gonna kind of wrap up. I hope again. I'm sorry for the power outage there for a minute. Kind of messed us, got us kind of thrown off there for a second. But like I said, glad for a couple of you out there that just stuck with me anyway on this. I appreciate that. Let me just check comments here. I don't see any comments or anything going on there. All right. So like I said, I hope everybody kind of enjoyed this recap. I hope, like I said, if anybody's kind of watching this live stream for the first time, I hope it gave everybody a little bit more flavor for the podcast and kind of what we do here on the Banker Next Door. And so, like I said, just keep an eye out. We're going to continue with the normal format. I'll be putting out episodes, throughout the week, Monday through Friday. I have a short, 10 to 15 minute episode followed by the BND Strategy Room live stream every Saturday night at 8 o'clock. So like I said, keep an eye out for a couple new episodes tomorrow and Friday, and then I'll be back with the normal live stream on Saturday night. And I wish everybody a happy new year. And and you know what? One last thing for everybody. I wanted to share this. We have a lot of amazing anniversaries that are coming up this year. This is from George Washington. The time is near at hand, which must probably determine whether or not Americans are to be free men or slaves. The fate of unborn millions now depends, under God, on the courage of this army. That was George Washington that he said as the Battle of New York was about to break out in I think this was in very beginning of July. This was just a couple of days after July 4th, after we declared our Declaration of Independence in 1776. So this will be coming up. We're going to have a lot of anniversaries this year, 250th anniversary of a lot of key events in the founding of our nation. We're going to have in April 19th, you're going to have the 250th anniversary of the shot heard around the world, the opening skirmishes that happened at Concord and Lexington. Then you're going to get the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the start of the War for Independence. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about a lot of the historical battles, the Battle for New York, the Battle of Staten Island, a lot of those initial skirmishes that came in, and some of the different things that happened around that. So I think this will be a great year for history. I think it'll be a great year for studying a lot of our national history, a lot of the different things that come up. And so again, I hope people, maybe like I said, if you're not familiar with a lot of these things, or if you never really studied it, hopefully this will be a great segue into that, having all these anniversaries throughout the year. So we'll see. But anyway, if you like this, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Make sure to check out the bankernextdoor.com. Keep an eye out for a lot of the different new content and different things that'll be coming up here throughout 2025, as I'm really excited about this year for the podcast. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. And I will see everybody again real soon. Like I said, new episodes Thursday and Friday, and be back here on Saturday night for another Strategy Room live stream at 8 p.m. So enjoy the football and everything here on New Year's Day. And I'll see everybody again real soon. Thanks a lot.